Dermot and Dave's Mind Yourself Now.
Mind yourself now.
Mind yourself now.
Mind yourself now.
On Today FM.
Hey!
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Eurovision 2021. No, sorry, wrong show. Sorry.
That's just a different one.
We're here. Thank you for your patience with a few technical difficulties we were dealing with, but now we are delighted to be here on Today FM's Facebook Live, and we're going to be with you for the next hour or so, answering all of your questions.
That's a royal we. We did not deal with any of the technical issues whatsoever. No, we just sat here.
No, and we want to get ready for this new normal everyone keeps talking about in as many ways as we can with you today. We've got experts on everything from skin to sleep, remote working and productivity, and of course everything to do with your mind.
Now we want you to get in touch because we've had some of your questions come in during the week, but you can ask a question right now if you comment beneath. So comment down there and we will try to get to as many of them as we can. And without further ado, we should introduce you to our team of experts who've joined us all week. Let's meet our panelists.
Tom Coleman is a qualified health scientist, a sleep coach and health and wellness expert. He's worked with professional athletes, elite teams and multinational companies on sleep. He's worked with Irish rugby players, shift workers and anyone who's ever said, I'm knackered. You can find him at tomcoleman.ie on Instagram. And you're very welcome, Tom.
We're also going to meet the skin nerd, Jennifer Rock. She's the founder of the Skin Nerd, including Nerd Network online skin consultations, Cleanse Off Mitt, and of course, Skin Ingredients. Theskinnerd.com or at The Skin Nerd on Instagram. And you're very welcome too, Jennifer.
Hello.
And our rock star psychologist is Louise Carroll. She's a chartered psychologist and a musician. You'll recognise her as the bass player in one of Ireland's most famous bands, the Blizzards. She's a composer, but she has 14 years of experience working as a mental health and creative professional. And of course, you'll be able to catch her on Instagram and Twitter as well. She's at Louise Carroll on Instagram and at Louise Composer on Twitter.
Hello.
Hi, Louise. Finally, Niamh Brady is a productivity coach, author of Remote Working Essentials, and is the creator of A Better Workday program. And God knows we all need one of those. Her mission is to create a better workday for all of us by teaching us new ways to manage our time, energy, and attention. NiamhBrady.com or at Niamh Brady Coach on social media. And welcome, Niamh, too.
Okay.
So we're going to be kicking all this off with your questions. You've been sending them in to us all week long, and thank you very much for that. You can also ask our experts anything you want right now, just down in the comment section. Leave your comment in there, and we'll get to as many as we can today. So let's kick off our questions for our Mind Yourself Now special. Tom, we're going to start with you because sleep has been such a big one. People who've never had issues with sleep over the last year since all the pandemic started suddenly have been having difficulties, and of course stress can affect our sleep as well. But for some reason, our first question comes from someone who's getting too much. They say, I sleep 8 hours at night, get enough exercise, but I've been working from home. I could easily climb back into bed for a 2-hour nap in the afternoon, but I know that's not healthy. Then I'm wrecked by 8 p.m. Is this a thing? Can people get too much sleep, Tom?
Too much of anything. It's all about balance, as we know. Too much of anything can impact us. So I suppose the question is why or what's happening. Is it just since COVID, or has something changed in their lives? I mean, if the demands have been the same and they're requiring more and more sleep, then we'd kind of have to look at it. So it could be indicative of an underlying issue. And the way to eliminate that would be just go to your GP and get your bloods done. I mean, it could be an underactive thyroid. It could be, too much iron, not enough iron. There's a whole host of things that can kind of cause fatigue. But if you're getting the recommended amount and you're still feeling kind of exhausted, it could be indicative. So just go and get a blood.
Could it be an issue for people who are just working from home, so that they're not moving more, they're more sedentary, they're maybe feeling less motivated about their work, their brains are being less challenged because they're not interacting with people, and we just get sluggish and tired when we don't get much stimulation?
Yeah, completely lack of stimulation. We're humans and we need that kind of social interaction. We need that stimulation. The inputs have been greatly reduced. Kind of work life and home life have melted into one place, and it is kind of draining. So what I would say is, like, engage. We need to engage with life, get outside, get that bright light. If we get these strong signals elicit strong responses. So we need to get outside. We need to exercise more. We know that we're sitting about 40 hours extra a month. We're not designed for sitting. So get more active, engage in life, and get outside.
I don't know, Tom, I'm perfectly designed for sitting, but I know what you mean. Jennifer, we'll move on to skin. I've got a rash on my arms, commonly referred to as chicken skin, says the text. I've always been self-conscious about it, and now my 7-year-old daughter is also suffering from the same. With sunny days coming, meaning it's time to get the arms out, I don't want her to become like me and have it affect her self-esteem. Any help, please, Jennifer Rock?
So chicken skin is the casual term for it. I won't endorse it because it's definitely not going to help how you feel in yourself. It's otherwise known as keratosis pilaris. So it's ultimately where you see redness on the back of the arms. It can happen on the face. It can happen at the derriere. It can literally happen anywhere they have a little bit of a hair follicle. And what's happening is that the hair and the skin together are kind of more knitted. So your quick solution would be to exfoliate the skin, but that's not really helping the problem at hand. So what I would suggest to do is look for lactic acid, glycolic acid. Acids always panic people, so don't use them to excess, particularly as we do come into the summer months and you are showing the arms. You don't want to have the skin more susceptible to light. But using something with a leave-on lotion will exfoliate those kind of lumpy bits first, and then something with, surprise, surprise, vitamin A is really going to help to repair the skin at a cellular level. In English, meaning it'll penetrate through the skin into where the skin cell is made, and you're less likely to have such a severe lump or bump. And you can do both of those at low levels from 7 onwards. There is a link as well from a nutrition perspective. We would always say to look at your diet, make sure you're having essential fatty acids internally, which really help just the skin to be as healthy as is possible and definitely help to hydrate it. But between 40 to 60% is the annual statistic UK and Ireland for those that have keratosis pilaris on the back of the arm. So don't feel alone. No, there is definitely a solution.
And what foods would have those essential fatty acids you're talking about?
So your nuts, your seeds, your fish, your oil. I know it's definitely harder for those that are choosing a vegan lifestyle, but ultimately getting as much hydration, everything you know, like Dermot Dave, do you do this? Everything that you know into your skin. It's genuinely the most anti-inflammatory diet you can possibly give yourself. Will help everything that we're going to talk about today. But for this particular
Pepsi Max, I think.
No, that is not what I said.
Niamh, I've got a question for you, and I'm delighted we have this question actually, because we got a lot of people asking questions around distraction, and unfortunately you were gone off the show this week and we didn't have time to get the question to you, but I'm very happy we can now. How do you deal with distractions when you're at home? I find myself really focused for an hour and then I can't help thinking about putting a wash on, starting the dinner, looking on the internet, whatever it happens to be. Are there any easy tools we can use to stop ourselves being distracted? Because it's so hard.
It is hard, and I think the first thing that you can do is just accept that you're a human and that you're going to want to do these things, right? So let's not try to be perfect first. And maybe instead of just letting those take control of your day, plan them into your day. So the day before, sit down and go, right, what do I have to do tomorrow? Cook the dinner, I have to do the washing, I have to do the bits of the bobs. Write a list, write a to-do list for the housework. We've already mentioned that we're sitting down too much, that we're spending too much time in front of our screens. It's depleting our energy. It's making us, I suppose, more tired, more distracted. Use the tasks that you have to get up off your seat, to take a 5-minute break and go down and load the washing. Then do a little bit of work and say, what's next on my list? Oh, I said I'd hang out the clothes. Grand, take a 5-minute break from work, get up off your seat, get out in the fresh air, hang out the clothes. The thing is, by having the list written down from either the morning of or the day before, you're actually saying, okay, these are just the house tasks I'm going to do, and you're kind of going to put a boundary around those. But you're definitely not going to say, I'm not going to touch them at all, because that's just completely unrealistic. You're only lying to yourself. You're not going to do it. So set yourself up for success by creating a list and then using little breaks during the day to do that kind of stuff.
And not beating yourself up, I suppose, as well. If you do get distracted, go easy on yourself.
Listen, if you want to check social media or whatever, grand. Set a timer for 5 minutes, scroll away, guilt-free, timer goes off, job done. Instead of going, I can't do it, then all you're thinking about is, I can't do it. You're not working anyway.
Exactly.
Are there any useful apps, Niamh, that you can have on your phone that actually help you with that? You know, you may jump in to check a quick fact on an email that someone sent you for work, but then next thing you know, you're answering an email that has nothing to do with work, just to get rid of it, and then you're suddenly in WhatsApp answering another message. Is there anything any other apps like that that are useful in terms of distraction?
Yeah, and it's funny because we all have our cycle, so like, what's your app cycle? I go Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, email, back to, we all have our own routine, but I'd love to hear yours. But, seriously, so there are apps, there are things like Rescue Time and other apps, and even I know the Android and iPhone also have built-in screen time apps. But what I actually do is, I have an iPhone, so I move all of my non-essential apps just into a folder.
Yeah.
So I have to 2 taps to get to it. So that just makes me think twice. So instead of downloading yet another thing, I literally just make it a little bit less accessible. So it makes me think twice before I do it. You can do that on any phone then.
Yeah, that's very smart.
Good idea.
It's easy. Yeah.
To you now, Louise Carroll, there's a question in about a baby. So hi, it says the message. We've had a baby and kept our contacts extremely low, including just meeting grandparents outside. We're now terrified of catching COVID and don't want to give it to our 6-month-old. Any ideas to reduce this sense of dread and threat, which you can imagine the parents of a new baby is very difficult now at this time?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And I think first of all, it's important to normalise, the sense of dread and the sense of threat. Let's talk a little bit about how we evolved. We have a nervous system that has a fight, flight, or freeze response. We developed that when we were on the grasslands, when a saber-toothed tiger was pegging it towards our heads. And it kept us alive. So our nervous system responds to threat. And we have just spent 14 months being told that social interaction equates with not just threat, but actually life-threatening illness. And so we have adapted to that. Our nervous systems adapt to that. And quite rightly, it makes us feel...
We're losing a little bit of
it's going to be...
Louise.
You're back now, Louise.
You're back, Louise. Sorry, keep going.
Okay, so it's gonna take a little bit of time. It's gonna take baby steps. It's gonna be a gradual re-emergence back into society, and you can't actively get rid of your sense of threat or dread. It's there for a reason. It's survival. But bit by bit by bit, the smaller steps you do, the more you do, the more you'll find that emotion starts to dissipate. And you will kind of integrate yourself back into society, but you can't force it, and you've got to do it in your own time, particularly that you have a new little priority on your hands, and that's okay. That's okay. So don't be derailed by the sense of threat or dread. It's natural. It's normal. It's a response to what we've been told for 14 months. Take it easy on yourself.
And like Niamh said, or like we said, not to beat yourself up over the distractions. I presume you don't have to justify your feelings to, maybe you have to explain to your friends and family, but ultimately, you don't need to go be hard on yourself because you feel a certain way, because there's no right or wrong way to feel about this.
No, there's not. And, you'll probably hear me banging on a lot about emotions, particularly negative emotions, because we have evolved in our society to to say, on the one hand, we hear it all the time, that it's okay not to be okay. But in actual fact, we don't necessarily act that way, because we find ways to avoid, to distract, to push away, thinking strategies, substances, to try and push away those negative emotions. But actually, they're there for a reason. That they're like our compass. They let us know that something's gone off track. Now, your emotions are valid, but it doesn't mean that they're true. And that's a really important thing to say. So sit with the emotion, and Dermot, all about this, sit with the emotion. Let it be there. It's the struggle that actually causes a greater problem in the long run. So take your time. Take your time. That's all I can say. Have some patience about your own sort of gradual integration back.
Yeah, and it's okay, particularly if you have a young baby, wherever the world and his mother wants to call around and probably feels like they should call around. Maybe they don't even want to, but they think, I have to go and see the baby. But so it's okay to set your own boundaries and go, look, we're just not taking visitors for the next few weeks, so thanks a million, send me a card if you want, but there's no need to call over. And it's okay to say that to people.
It is. And, I think actually communication is a massive part of everything as we move back out. Being clear about how you feel about something and actually articulating that. We have a lot of stress and anxiety because we feel, what are people going to say, and they're going to judge me, and I don't want to communicate. We are at the cusp of it now. Now is the time to say, I'm not quite there yet, and that's okay. And it should be okay. If it's not, reevaluate your friends.
Totally fair.
Yeah. Jennifer, I've got another one for you. Since my late teens, I've suffered with the skin on my hands drying out and flaking off in patches, but this only happens during the hot summer weather. During the winter, they're grand, and now the weather's warming up, they started to crack and peel again. I've used every cream on the market and nothing works. Even cream prescribed by doctors doesn't do anything. Any help would be greatly appreciated.
Do you know what's really interesting listening to everyone speak there about skin, or about returning to the normality? Of course, I say skin is everything. But people are feeling so much pressure about themselves to behave a certain way, to look a certain way. We feel that we've had a year of cocooning ourselves. So the amount of questions that are coming through to us now about things like dryness or hands or pigmentation, people just can really not feel so good in themselves. And this is a perfect example of it. So this person's obviously been experiencing it since their late teens. It's an ongoing issue, so it's chronic at this stage. And it can be so deflating when you get to this stage in your life and you don't know what to do. So I think the main thing I would do, because it sounds severe, there's definitely medical elements needed there, and I know they've already looked into the doctor, but I have to ethically and morally and responsibly wise say, please do go back to the doctor. From a topical perspective, ingredients to look out for would be SPF, absolutely, to ensure that you're protecting against the extra rays that we'll hopefully get over the coming summer months, particularly as you think when you drive, or, you know, I don't know what way I'm driving, but when you drive, that you're having a lot of light on the top of the hands. And then other ingredients to be aware of would be things that are barrier forming, so something like ceramides, which you naturally actually have in your skin, but we just want to put those back in. They really help with what's called transepidermal water loss. It's the nerdy way to say the natural water reservoir you have in your skin. We're trying to retain that and keep it in. So it's like putting, I suppose, like a weight at the end of a balloon. You're trying to keep all that water inside in the skin. So there are two key things to really be aware of. And like, you know what I'm going to say, it's always back to inside and looking after. It is genuinely looking after yourself, your mental health. It's looking after your sleep, your diet. I mean, perfect panel for it, but definitely food has a huge part to play with the inflammatory response that our skin has. The skin is an organ, so it will almost be a barometer for how well everything else is inside. So to take that into consideration and perhaps track it, see when you find that it's worse or when it's easier. Are you stressed? Are you not? Are you sleeping well? Are you not? Can't comment on those things as well as the other women on the panel, but there's definitely, it's all holistically interlinked. There's no denying that.
Okay. Jennifer Rock, skin expert and articulated lorry driver there.
Don't forget, if you have a question you want to ask that you maybe think we're not going to get to, or you haven't heard it on the chat today, put it in the comments below this, and we will try and get to them by the end. Tom, a question for you, and maybe Niamh, you could chime in as well at the end of this. I have a serious stress at work, says the text. When I wake, I check my work email. Wrong, I know, but I'd rather know what's happening than be surprised. I know I shouldn't have email beside me in the bed, but it's a habit I don't feel I can break. I feel like I'm on 24/7. Tom, what do you think?
Wow. I mean, look, it's huge. I think it's that kind of culmination of stress, of the unknown outcomes of technology, and of just an increased amount of work on us, and that's caused a huge issue for people. So, like, if we look at sleep and stress, they're absolutely linked, because Louise spoke about already the nervous system. You know, we have the fight or flight stress response, but we also have the parasympathetic system, which we have a calm response, and this is like a continuum. So if we continue to mount on pressure and stress and anxiety, we're agitated, our systems are agitated, we won't sleep. So we need to bring ourselves down on that scale. And I'm afraid checking the email again and again is only bringing us up on that scale. Yeah. And, you know, if the narrative is like, I can't break that out, well, you won't be able to. So you firstly realize that you can. You know, empower yourself and say, look, I'm going to change. This is something that I can change. You need sort of short, medium, and long-term strategies to deal with stress, and we can leverage our breathing, our respiration. We can do things like this, which are real-time tools. Like, the fastest scientific method to reduce stress is the physiological sigh, is that double inhale and the slow exhale, where we do it reflexively. Children do it. We do it when we cry. You do the right, so we can actually leverage our physiology immediately. But then the medium term is to cognitively wind down from the stress. Okay, and set boundaries were mentioned already. Hugely important that we set boundaries on connectivity. So we can change it, but we we have to change the narrative first off, and then implement different strategies for dealing with that.
Yeah, and Niamh, you must hear this, that employers maybe don't demand that their employees are constantly at the end of an email, and we know there's the right to disconnect that is coming through the government at the moment. But ultimately, those things and oh no, we'd never expect our employees to do this, or yes, there's a right to disconnect coming from the EU, we'll implement it. Ultimately, the reality is, you, as this person says, is I don't want to be surprised by something. I want to know what's happening with the emails. I want to know what's going on in work. I want to feel like I'm on top of everything, so I can see why they're doing it, even though they shouldn't be.
Yeah, totally. So, first of all, what I would say is, if I was chatting to that person, first thing we do is understand what's happening in work, right? That's causing you to be so stressed, and we need to look at your responsibilities, what work you're focusing on, you're doing the right things, and all that kind of jazz, right? But let's just talk about a solution. I have experienced this multiple times. I'm a productivity coach, not because I'm perfect at it, but because I'm a recovering workaholic, okay? So, like, I know it makes no sense, but I know you do it. Like, I wrote a blog saying, are you awake at 3 a.m. checking your email? Because I used to be awake, right? So this is the cycle I use. And I'm saying I use because every couple of years I have to come back and do it again because things change and it creeps back in, right? So this is what I do, and it might help, right? So the first thing I do is go, oh crap, I have to do this again. And then I do a couple of things every evening to get me started. I check my email in a room other than my bedroom before I go to bed, because I know I want to know what's going on, right? So there's no point denying that. So I'll open up the laptop, check my emails, like 10 o'clock. I'm like, okay, Niamh, you see what's going on there. Grab a pen and paper and jot down things you're going to do the day after. The next thing I do is I delete the app off my phone, just for now. I can reinstall it in like 60 seconds again in a half an hour if I want to. I know I can do that. You know, it's not a permanent thing, but I'm just going to delete it for now. And then on the notebook where I've written down the bits and pieces, I literally draw a line under it. I'm like, I'm drawing a line under the day, physically, and drawing a line under it, and I go to bed. When I'm lying in the bed staring at the ceiling at 2 a.m. going, oh, I use the flashlight on my phone to write down the questions I have and the things I'm wondering about on the notebook below the line. And because I deleted the app, if I really want to check my email, I either have to download the app again at 3 a.m. or I have to go into the web browser, go onto my email. It's just
it's too much.
Too much. So for one night, I don't do it. Wake up the next day, the sky hasn't fallen down. I check email, the business hasn't gone bankrupt. Oh my God, this is amazing. So look, I'll try it again tonight. And it's literally step by step, day by day. And I find within a week or two, I've broken the cycle. But again, just to be honest with you, every couple of years it might creep back in on you, and that's okay. Again, it all depends on what's going on in work, you know. But I'd love to understand what's happening in that person's actual work day that's causing them, but that's a whole different conversation. Yeah. So hopefully that helps a little bit from a practice perspective,
It's Dermot Dave here on Today FM's Facebook Live, and we've got our Mind Yourself Now panel of experts. You can get a question in if you just joined us. We have our experts here. Just drop a question into the comment section underneath, and we'll get to as many as we can. And they're still coming in. Here's one for you, Louise. I'm going on an outing with a group in a couple of weeks. I only know one person in the group. An outing? What's that? And I'm a little worried about making good connections, as we'll all be spending a few days together. What's the best way to make a good first impression and keep conversation interesting and flowing? So maybe there's a little bit of social anxiety creeping in there into this person's perceptions of what it's going to be like.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. The first thing that popped into my head actually was, this might seem obvious, but sometimes our thoughts can lead us astray. But keeping a conversation going and flowing and interesting is not wholly your responsibility. You know, it's going to take two of you to do that. And a good flowing conversation happens when two of you show up, you know, and are present in the moment. One of the tips I can give is not around, you know, you don't have to go with your list of topics to talk about, you know, which might typically be sort of advised in some situations. You know, it's not, okay, fine, you know, have some topics that you like to talk about or that you find interesting. But actually, one of the most successful strategies for engaging with another person is listening skills. You know, use your listening skills. You don't need to prepare anything to have good listening skills. Listen to what they're saying, listen to what they're talking about, because that's going to give you the cue for your next question. You know, and, you know, as that famous quote that we all know, you know, people don't remember what you say, they remember how you made them feel. And when someone listens to you, I mean, really listens to you, and to the point where they can engage and ask appropriate questions, and that's how the conversation keeps going. That's how you develop and maintain really good social connections. So something that doesn't involve any prep, listening skills, work on that.
Yeah, because I think the listening part is sort of the poor relation, isn't it, to a lot of us? We always feel... I remember having a conversation with my brother years ago, and he was saying to me he'd had some difficult social occasion where everyone seemed to be really boring, and then he was exhausted after sort of trying to get everybody G'd up, you know? And he was saying, why do... Because he knew I acted the same way. Why do we feel the need to sort of raise a group, you know? When a lot of time, it's as you said, it's not our responsibility to suddenly make, you know, everyone have an amazing time. Sometimes, as you say, what about just sitting down and listening and actually flipping it on its side? I think that's a really good bit of advice.
And it's a really good point, though, you know, and somewhere along the way, you got good feedback when you were the one to raise the room, right? Where you were the one to raise other people's emotions. You were the one that got praised or got thanked, you know, for being the one that lit up everyone else's life. You know, you're the one that gets positive feedback for being the life and soul of the party. So you learn that, you learn it, and then you identify with it, and it becomes part of who you are. And so in every situation that you walk into where there's a lapse in conversation, like, boom, you're right in, you know, you're right in and telling jokes or punchlines, and that's what it is.
We never grew out of it, Dave, did we?
No, we're still here today.
Still getting paid for it.
Jennifer, I've got a question for you. And unfortunately, acne, we know every time you come on the radio show, we know we're going to get between 10 and 20 questions in about acne, and there's so many different ones. But this one I think kind of encapsulates what a lot of people are saying, and particularly for people who are long-term acne sufferers. It's finally starting to come under control, says the message. Now in my mid-20s, but lately the skin on the rest of my body seems unhealthy, for want of a better word. I drink loads of water, I eat well, but my skin, especially on my legs, has all these tiny red dots, not spots, just loads of these little red dots covering my legs. Have you any ideas on how to get rid of these? So it's someone who's managed to get the acne under control, but is now finding something else is causing stress.
It's quite interesting. I suppose we have 40,000 clients in the Nerd Network, and honestly, they come in with one main goal, and then unfortunately, as soon as that goal is addressed, you're on to the next, just human nature. We're almost, I suppose, chasing ourselves in so many ways. So it's not uncommon to have alleviated one skin condition and then find that you have another that now truly disturbs you. So what I would say is, in terms of, it depends on the skin. It is definitely a little bit harder to advise without the picture, but it depends. If the acne was on the legs, this is what it sounds like it might be, then there's a possibility that what's left behind is called post-inflammatory erythema, so PIE, or some call it post-inflammatory hyperpigmentation in English, and we probably all suffered with it at some stage. You get a spot, the spot goes, thank you, the bacteria is released, but eventually you're left with this kind of red blemish on the skin, so it looks mottled or discoloured, and that can sometimes actually affect people more than the spot itself. So I think it's really important to know what to do. So if you still have the spot, which I know this particular person doesn't, Dermot Dave, tell me the acid that I'm going to say.
Salicylic.
Hey, so you don't need me anymore. Salicylic acid is fantastic. It's cherolytic. In English, it means it has the ability to kind of spiral into the oil or the pore, and has the ability to break down the little white or the bacteria. And the sooner you help the spot in that regard, the less likely you are to then have that mark left thereafter. However, in this situation, it sounds like that wasn't quite the case. So then what you're looking for is always SPF, because any discoloration on the skin, you want to try and make sure that it doesn't change any further, that you kind of protect and shield. And a lot of the time, it is the sunlight that is exacerbating a lot of these issues. So SPF is definitely important, particularly if you might have the pins out over the summer months. And then ingredients that are called tyrosinase inhibitors. So ultimately within the skin, when there's a slight discoloration, it's set off by an enzyme activity within the skin. So what you're looking for on a bottle is a serum or a lotion or a moisturizer, so something that stays on the skin that has something like vitamin C, vitamin E. A new trendy one that's very commonly available at the moment and quite affordable is tranexamic acid, originally in the medical world, now brought into the skincare world, as most things are. And that is brilliant over a period of time to help with the redness in the capillaries. If they're bumpy, it's back to the earlier question of keratosis pilaris. And if that doesn't work, there are treatments you can get done, such as IPL for the legs or any part of the body, that when you have diffuse redness, the light basically is attracted to the redness, and it just helps disperse it amongst the body. So there's always ways. It just depends on what way you want to do it.
Brilliant.
One for you, Tom. I've been trying to find a job for the last year. I've reached the end of my patience with the process now, as I don't like my current job, and my sleep has gotten so bad. But I've also noticed when I'm not due in work the next morning, I sleep the whole night through fine. It's getting so exhausting now, and I don't know how much longer I can deal with this. So I'd say there's a lot of people who know that it's their job that's affecting their sleep. It's stressing them out. They can't sleep properly, but they're stuck in the position. And what do they do in that position to actually get some sleep and keep themselves sane?
Yeah, it's a bit like, I think they call it Sunday night fever, where, you know, we're just there sweating. We say, oh God, I have to go in, you know, and that could be to a, you know, 9 to 5 or shift or whatever. And it's just there, it's looming, it's hangovers. And again, this was mentioned so much, and I think that hopefully the panel will agree with me. It's when we're looking into the future and we're starting to build a picture in our heads that's where the difficulty arises. And with sleep, we build healthy routines, and this keeps us in the present moment, because we don't want that dopaminergic kind of thing of looking into the future constantly. We want the serotonin, the serene serotonin. Now, of course, we're going to have to deal with the long-term issue there of finding a new job, okay? But in the short term, we bring ourselves into the present, and we do that by developing a really nice routine, you know, of unwinding, winding down, and being in control cognitively and emotionally as well. And this is where the meditation, the reading, the music, and just, you know, taking control of the few hours ahead of us comes into play. And again, you know, we train our circadian rhythm, which is functions and processes that happen in the body. We train that ourselves, and if we use our routines to train healthy habits and to elicit responses at particular times, and that's what we need to do. We need to be cognizant and aware and present, as present as we can, because any of us, it just grows arms and legs and it turns into a monster in our head. So this is where the reading, the meditation, the body scans, and all those different tools and techniques come into play.
Louise, you must deal with that. People who just hate their jobs and find that they can't get themselves to sleep, or I can't get the problems out of their minds.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And it's a lot of it becomes so all-encompassing, you know. And again, when you focus on something that evokes a kind of negative emotion, it just sort of saturates your outlook, and it can actually affect your relationships, you know, because you're so focused on this thing that you hate, this environment that you dislike, that makes you uncomfortable, you know, or that you're not succeeding in, or that there's conflict in, or whatever number of reasons. And it can really impact the rest of your life, you know, everything else that's going on in it. And so sometimes when I have clients with this kind of issue, we dig down into, well, what is it? You know, what specifically is it? Is it the environment? Is it that there's conflict? You know, is it that you don't like the work? You know, we try and pinpoint what that is, but sometimes it's also a perfectionistic streak. Sometimes can impact how you feel about work and the anxiety levels that raise before you go into work. Because if I can't do this perfectly, if I can't do this 100% to the best of my ability, then I'm failing. You know, and if you feel that you're failing, your anxiety levels are going to hike again. And so that keeps you awake, and then you worry about not doing a good job. So a lot of what, you know, some of the portions of time that we spend working with clients is around, can you give 60%? You know, do you really have to give 100% in your job every single day? Can you give 60? And what then can you put that other 40% into in your life? You know, that will help that outlet, that social outlet, the emotional outlet. You know,
I'll tell you, I've been giving it 60% for my whole career.
Oh, 60 is a stretch now.
That's a high number. I aim for 60. I get about 30. Yeah.
And look at you, you're positively thriving.
I don't think we can. I don't think we can solve it. We can never think our way out of it at 2 o'clock in the morning. Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah. We need to action our way out of it. Like, we need to do something here. And someone said to me many years ago, you can't think your way into better living. You have to live your way into better thinking. And this is where maybe we don't want to take the action, and that's where we're being kept awake. So,
Niamh, one for you, and this is interesting. I think it'll affect a lot of people as we kind of return to the new normal, whatever that is going to be. And some people may end up working from home while other people are going back to the office. This one says, any tips in making sure that I don't get left out if I'm the only one who stays working remotely?
Yeah, and I think this is going to happen to a lot of people actually, depending on what they choose. So the first thing I would say is get a buddy. Always have an in-office buddy, right? And this person is going to be the person who, when there's, for example, a meeting or something, and you're the one that's remote on the screen and everyone else is around the table and they're all having the chats and you're like this on the screen like for 10 minutes, include me, your buddy is going to be the one to say, oh, did Tom want to say something there? You know, and they're going to be that person for you in the room. That's also going to be the person who you have the chats with during the week. Like, what's the gossip? What's happening? What's on the grapevine? Tell me all the news. Like, tell me the bits that's happening in the canteen that I'm missing out on, right? You really do need that person. Now, the second thing that you need then is to own it, right? You have decided to work from home, so you need to put yourself forward and ask the questions. Am I missing out on anything? Did anything happen yesterday? Tell me what's going on. You know, talk and just be open about it and say, guys, I don't want to be left out. Be honest, I don't want to be left out. You know, and you'll find that just by having a buddy and then you saying, well, this is my choice, and I'm going to proactively make sure that I keep a stake in the office, even if I'm virtually, it'll make a big difference. But remember now, people probably are going to be a bit more tolerant of it because they've been through it themselves as well. So hopefully your team will be good to you as well. That's the other thing. Yeah.
Jennifer, eczema is a tricky thing for not just adults, but if you're a parent, it can be quite concerning for you. If your child has eczema and you feel helpless and you know they're feeling discomfort. Someone says, my son has really bad eczema. At the moment, he has a bad outbreak. What's the best product to ease the itch? I'm sure they've been through all the products at this point, but what do you know works in your experience?
I think it's a tough one, particularly when it's your child, isn't it? We tend to look after our children better than ourselves at times, unfortunately. I think the main thing is to figure out the scale of the severity of it. So obviously talk to your doctor if it's oozing or beyond tender. But from applying an ointment or a product perspective, it's actually not dissimilar to what I said earlier. For me, it's about getting the correct ceramides and back into their skin. Because when you have eczema or eczema, I won't potato, I won't fight with you. The reality is that the skin is more open. It's like a mild wound depending on the severity of it. So trying to protect it is definitely key. In times of old, back when we were little, it would have been the Vaseline and the barriers and that kind of, but they tend to transfer quite easily. Whereas now there are brilliant brands. La Roche-Posay is a great one, affordable, most pharmacies. Aven, Mugu is more targeted towards children. They say it's good enough to eat. I do not endorse that you eat it, but at least if the eczema is in an area that the child can get to with their hands, it's something to be aware of. And then Seavite, another Irish phenomenal brand, but seaweed, vitamin C, vitamin E, is all about ultimately repairing the skin. It is a barrier. It is there to be your first line defense. So getting those key ingredients in just to help shield it and pacify it and calm it. And what Aven have, which is quite interesting, is antihistaminic benefits in their product, which ultimately means when the histamine reaction is a light and that child is really trying to get at their poor skin, that it tells to dull that down ever so slightly. So, and if you are having to go onto steroids or whatever the medical prescription might be for the particular condition, know that you can use these products alongside. Always check, but you can definitely do skincare and medical practice side by side, and often they're thought of as separate entities, but I 100% encourage people to think of them together.
Brilliant. Louise, there's an interesting one here about family. It says, my brother has social anxiety and then he got married in lockdown, inviting no family, which was hard as it created a further distance between us all. Now he doesn't talk to us except for the odd text reply to another brother. I don't know what to do as we're worried that he's really gone into himself.
Yeah. Okay, that's really tough. And, you know, it starts with actually stating that he has got social anxiety. And again, I'd be wondering, is that pervasive? Has he had that for years, you know, or has it just emerged? But, you know, he has gotten married, so, you know, he's functioning to some extent. But here's where the word communications just jumps into my mind. And I know he's not responding, but I'm wondering what kind of overt, you know, connections have this side of the family made, you know, whether it's to call or to actually speak. But, you know, it's to express the worry as well. It's to name it. You know, sometimes we're afraid to name it because we don't want to make somebody feel uncomfortable. So we dance around it, you know, pretending it's okay and checking in and sort of poking, which doesn't get the right response, particularly around social anxiety, because a lot of it is anxiety around this sort of superficial interaction that doesn't have any meaning, you know, and you're actually hiding how you really feel behind it. So cut it, you know, push all that off the table and really get to the core of it. We're worried about you, You know, we haven't seen you. If you're fine, I'm delighted. You don't have to be in contact with us all of the time, but we are worried, and let us know how you're doing, you know, because we care, you know, and just cut to the core of it.
And do you think social anxiety can creep into relationships between siblings? And, you know, you kind of view it as maybe an external thing where I have to go out with friends, or I don't want to go into a shop and have a conversation. Can you have social anxiety with talking to your brother, your sister, or whoever?
It depends on the relationship. You know, it depends on how the relationship functions. And some people have really good relationships with their family members, but some people have quite strained relationships with their family members. And so it can actually be even more straining and draining to engage with those kinds of relationships than it would be with people who are not part of your family. So it really depends on how it's functioning, but it certainly can be pervasive. It can apply in all areas of your life. And so if it's, you know, if it was the guy himself, it would be, well, how is this affecting your life? You know, how is this disadvantaging you in all of the areas, or are you happy actually withdrawing? You know, there's so many questions I have back to that question, you know, to try and get to the bottom of actually what's going on in the background as well.
I think there's a lot of people who might have sudden social anxiety with one or two family members from time to time. not to belittle this family's issues. Tom, one for you, and it has to do with earworms. How do you turn off earworms in my head at night? The same song goes round and round in my ears, and they keep me up for hours. Well, my first piece of advice is don't listen to Dave's cheesy music choices. I'm not listening to music constantly, so I don't know what else to do. So,
baby shark.
Oh my God, you just pulled that one out of my head. I have a 2.5-year-old, and that seems to be going on for me quite a lot recently, the baby shark and many others. So the advice is to actually listen to the whole song. Right. There's a few bits of advice. First of all, listen to the whole song, because you've only got the baby shark bit, but like if you actually go and listen to it, you know, that's one technique. It's like if there's if you're trying to rest or sleep and there's a lawnmower or a bird or something like that, you know. And I think this comes from Buddhism or something. You actually focus on it. You're trying to sleep and this is a distraction. So then you turn your attention to the distraction, and you focus all your energy on that. And what happens is then your brain starts getting tired and pulls away from it, but you pull it back again. And that's a really good technique to help you fall asleep if there's something like that keeping you wake up.
I should use that on my snoring with my wife and tell her, no, just focus on my snoring. Don't use it as a distraction. Lean into it. You'll go to sleep in no time.
And of course, the other thing is just to give yourself some cognitive chewing gum, to give yourself an exercise that requires some little bit of cognition. So yeah.
When I say actually, Tom, I find that really helpful. I think, and a lot of people maybe don't even know that this is a thing, but and I don't know where I picked it up somewhere along the way, but like I will do the absolute most mundane brain exercise if I'm find myself awake at night. Like I will go through say I'm a Man United fan, so I will go through the squad.
I'm sorry for your trouble.
Thanks very much, Tom. It's actually Louise. I need a session with Louise after Wednesday's final.
No.
But I will go through the team from number one. I'll say number one, David De Gea. He's from Spain, and he played for Atletico Madrid before he came to United. Then I'll go number two. He's Victor Lindelof. He's from Sweden. Yeah. He played for, and I literally go, and I never get past like Phil Jones is number 4 because I'm asleep. It's amazing.
Yeah. Like who gets past Phil Jones? Nobody. That's why he's in the team.
There's a great deal of science behind it, because we know that if we're in that kind of problem-solving part of our prefrontal cortex, right? So this is activated, and it's activated through work. We're problem-solving. We're thinking. We're analysing something called duration path outcome. Okay. If we're here, it's the same part of our brain that's in charge of worry. Okay, so if you take away that activity, and you're going to worry. So what we need, and people who, and I'm sure you get this a lot as well, Dermot, people go, I just can't turn off my mind. It's just the minute they try and meditate, a sure sign that you need to actually meditate is you just drawing the curtain back. So what we need to do is move activity away from the duration path outcome analysis and bring it to something where it's really sort of simple, not too exciting or anything else, or not too stimulating. We're not stimulating, and that is, it works like incredibly well at putting us to sleep.
Brilliant.
Lots of your questions coming in on the comment section. Thank you for that, everyone who's on Facebook Live today. One for you, Louise. How would I deal with the lack of motivation? Or actually, maybe this is one for Niamh as well. Not wanting to get up every morning and seeing no purpose in doing anything. So I think a lot of that has been amplified, hasn't it, during COVID, that feeling of general meh. And obviously, you know, that can advance far beyond meh into a place where someone is in a worse state. How do you deal with that sense of just, oh, I just can't get motivated to do something?
Well, first to say that that feeling is extremely normal at the moment. You know, I was talking to you guys during the week, and what we were talking about was that sort of feeling of languishing, you know, being stuck between not having a bad day, but not having a good day, and not actually feeling like you've connected to anyone meaningfully, you know, but functioning, being okay, and not having a huge amount to complain about, but yet not feeling happy either. So you're in this type of vortex, or this kind of limbo. And just to say as well, one of the best predictors of good mental health is actually having a really strong sense of purpose, you know, and the sense of purpose has just sort of diminished over the last 14 months for so many people. And going about reconnecting with something that gives you that spark, you know, that makes you feel a little bit alive, is going to probably need to be a priority actually in many people's lives. And that doesn't mean shifting or turning your life upside down. It just means going back and trying things again. And you might not know what it is. And by the way, don't wait for motivation for that to happen. You know, action comes first, motivation comes second, you know, and it's a misnomer that you have to feel motivated to do something before doing it. You got to take the action first, you know, despite the emotions that you might be having. You know, as I said earlier, emotions are valid, but they're not necessarily true. Notice them, give them a nod, thank them for being there, right? But do what matters to you anyway. You know, take a step towards something. It might not work. You might not like it. No, that doesn't give me a sense of purpose. It doesn't fill me with joy. Good. Okay, try something new. You've eliminated something. You know,
Dave,
and it is about
Dave,
just taking a step.
So I was going to say, Louise, Dave knows what I'm going to talk about, and it's the skateboard. And as much slagging as I've gotten over the last year, when everything went weird with COVID and the city centre where we work was completely weird, nothing was open, everyone was feeling wonky. I had just taken up skateboarding for no good reason. Midlife crisis. Midlife celebration. And weirdly, every day it gave me this sense of purpose when the world didn't seem to have a lot of purpose, you know, or a sense of purpose. And my purpose was, don't kill yourself. You know, don't fall onto the concrete. But even though I was just messing around on the skateboard every day after work and here, it kind of gave me that weird sense of purpose and gave me a chance to disengage my mind from everything that was happening around me. So sometimes it doesn't have to be a change of career or, you know, moving to an ashram in India. Sometimes it could be just something as silly as picking up a guitar you used to play, or in my case, a skateboard.
I presume it's quite hard to worry and think about things when the skateboard is travelling at 400 miles an hour down the road.
Absolutely. That's why I call it mindfulness in motion.
There's no better meditation. That's exactly it. Drop into the present moment. I dropped off there, so I may have missed something really important, but I'm just going to... But what you said is exactly right. It's just finding anything. It could be sketching. It could be drawing. It's just something that gives you that sense of, I like this. This is me. This is an expression of a part of me. You know, rather than... And this is when we talk about social anxiety, we talk about anxiety, it's because we are constantly looking at ourselves through other people's eyes. You know, when we lose connection to who we are, and we lose connection to being able to build up the parts of us that bring us joy. So, you know, take the time to explore, take the time to skateboard, you know, or to roller skate, or whatever it is that you want to do. Try it, play. You know, we don't have a lot of play anymore. We take things very seriously. You know, we've had, and rightly so in many ways, we've had an absolute surge of bad news, you know, and of outrage, and it's affecting the collective psyche. You know, so we actually, one of the most important things, and certainly that I work with my clients in, is bring in that mischief again, you know, bring in that sense of play, hold things lightly, you know, because we've been holding things so heavily for such a long time.
Great stuff. Don't forget to keep those questions coming in the comments below if you want to ask us anything. But let's continue on with some of the ones we got in. Niamh, one for you. This is an interesting one. Would you have any help on how to say no? My boss tends to pile the work on. I'm finding myself working late and even at the weekends. I want my boss to think I'm doing well, but I am exhausted.
Totally. So funnily enough, actually, this is something I talk to people a lot about. Before I went on mat leave, I recorded a webinar. So there's a YouTube video, 27 minutes, where I go through how to say no at work. So the person can go to my YouTube channel and watch 5 steps I bring people through. But the most important thing, if they don't have time to do that because they're too busy working, is awareness. Okay, so you need, first of all, for you to be completely aware of everything you are working on, what's on your plate. Make a list of the whole lot of it. Started, is it in progress? How much is left to do? How much time is it going to take you? Have your list. I call it a workload review. Have complete understanding of what is on my plate, so that then when your manager goes to ask, will you do this? You can say, well, let's have a quick chat because I already have all of this going on. So if I take this on as well, which one of these are we going to take off the list? You help me now make a decision on this, because
and that seems entirely reasonable that you go, as you said, with a a list of, look, here's the reality of what's going on. So if you want me to do that, who's going to do one of these?
Yeah, and like when I work with people, the first thing I ask them to do is to track their time for a week, right? It's for a number of different reasons, depending on why you're working with me. But it's actually really useful when you're working with your managers as well, because if your manager asks you to do something else, you go with your timesheet and you say, okay, this was my week last week. Did you see 9 p.m.? That was me checking my email. And see Saturday? That was me doing the report. Now, please tell me where you want me to do this. Oh, here's my list of things. Tell me instead, what should we take off it? And the manager is suddenly going, you have all that on? That's not important. Someone else can do that. And all of a sudden, this conversation starts to unravel. But you have to kind of have, as I said, first step, you need to know what you're working on. Because if you don't know, how are you going to have the conversation about it?
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah.
Yeah, and the
Jennifer.
webinar, as I said, yeah.
On your YouTube, yeah.
Thanks, Niamh. Jennifer, another one for you. You talk a lot of the time about the importance of SPF. Whether we listen to you or not is another thing. I know Dave's very good in that department.
I am good in SPF.
And I'm trying my best. But someone says, can Jennifer run through exactly what I need to be looking for when I'm buying an SPF, how much I need to be putting on, and where it needs to go?
Yeah, of course. So firstly, Dermot, your homework before next time we meet is to apply SPF every single day, and I'll get better at meditation.
Aye.
Aye. I think the reality is that SPF is one of those key products, regardless of whether you're truly into skincare or you're not. As I always say, the skin is an organ. You got to respect it accordingly. So Dave, you're winning there because you are actually looking after your skin, Dermot, as an organ. So I think it's important to know there's 2 types of SPF on the market. There's what we call a chemical SPF, and there's what we call a mineral SPF. So the word chemical, I think it often conjures the image of like Samantha Jones, Sex and the City, peels, irritation. People hear the word and they're kind of panicked by it. But actually your skin is acidic. So by putting a chemical onto it, it's not always a negative. Like I'm sitting here with a glass of water. This is a chemical. So don't worry about the word chemical as much. So when you're choosing an SPF, if you are quite dry, irritated, sensitive skin, you have rosacea in the family, then maybe do lean towards a physical. What's the difference? Physical basically means that when you physically put it onto the skin, it has the ability to slightly absorb the rays, but also reflect the rays away. Whereas when you put a chemical on, you're ultimately absorbing the rays for the body then to break it down and disperse it in itself. What you're looking for is ingredients like titanium dioxide or zinc oxide. So you literally pick up the bottle, look at the back and see if those 2 ingredients are in it. That would suggest that it's physical. And then it's avobenzone is usually one of the more popular ones for chemical. Some brands are huge advocates of one over the other. I don't tend to put too much weight onto it. If you're sensitive, go physical. If not, then don't worry as much. The hard part comes with the number, doesn't it really? I think when you live on an island like ours, people tend to, almost scoff when I say put SPF on every day because we think, sure, look, I don't really have the sun. But the main lights that we're exposed to, like 365 days of the year, are your UVA rays, which is they call it the silent deadly ray, because it's the ray that penetrates through this skylight window that I have right in front of me. When I'm driving, it's the light, remember? When I'm driving, it's the light that comes through the window, it comes at the side. So that one's to be aware of because you can't avoid it. Whereas we tend to, in Ireland, think, well, we have no sun, I don't need to put SPF on, it's not sunny outside. Once there's light, you should put your SPF on. So we always call it your shield or your armour. And how much you should apply, so kind of going in line with, I suppose, the Irish Cancer Society, you're supposed to be putting on about 3 finger lengths of SPF every single day from your collarbone right up to your forehead. So it equates to like a half a teaspoon. The problem is that people tend not to put that much on. So for example, if this is how much I'm supposed to have on, most people would probably have put this into the palm of their hand and apply it because they're fearful that it will feel sticky or tacky or you'll look quite white or reflective. So honestly, the amount you apply is the most important thing with SPF because it truly means that you're covering your skin, and reapplication is important as well.
Yeah,
I was going to say reapplication is something that I learned a long time ago, and I have to say that's something that really kind of shocked me. That I thought, get up in the morning, put it on as it built into my moisturizer, and that's me. I'm a good boy for the rest of the day. But in reality, by the time, like say, I come into work, sit here all day inside, and then head off at lunchtime. Sure, you've no SPF on at lunchtime. You're starting again because it's already worn off your skin.
And for those that wear makeup, there's always an argument like, how do I reapply? So there's a lot of SPFs on the market now that you can touch back up by a powder, or there's a lot of SPF spritz that you can put back on over your day just to ensure that you're constantly recycling those UV benefits.
Goodness for you, Dermot.
Yes, spritz clock we like to call it. So you're constantly spritzing. But the other thing to be aware of that's really interesting is when you have like a lot of antioxidants in your diet, you're ultimately allowing your skin cells to be more protected against light. That doesn't mean you don't need SPF, but you can really look after your skin inside out. Honestly, things like a tomato soup, there's lycopene, which is an enzyme that's released when you cook tomatoes, and that's really powerfully protecting the skin at a cellular level against light. That, alongside maybe a vitamin C serum and SPF on top, just means that you're not. SPF isn't you still burn with SPF. It's not this holy grail foolproof protection. So staying in the shade, being sun savvy, avoiding the direct heat of the light is definitely important, and being aware that light is something we have to be conscious of 365 days a year, and how much you apply is genuinely key. Reapplication is also what we should be aiming for.
Yeah, men have 2 speeds or 2 ways of applying sun cream. We either put the tiniest little bit on and we do this, if we're afraid that we're going to use too much, or else half the bottle goes on and we just...
Guaranteed to get in your eyes.
We can't seem to get it right.
I don't think you're on your own. I think women do similarly as well, to be honest. But if you look at the skin cancer statistics and how they're set to double in the next 10 years, it's terrifying. It's one of the most unfortunately fastly growing cancers in Ireland. And I think we've forgiven ourselves for the ignorance that we have, thinking that because we're not in the heat or we don't live on mainland Europe that we don't need it. But we genuinely do. And getting checked is really important. My son hates me. He's nearly 18. He's like, do I have to do this for forever? Because that's exactly how he talks. But mole mapping done every single year without a shadow of a doubt. He hates it. He has to get completely naked in front of a beautiful male doctor. But it's so important because we don't, I have hundreds of moles on my body, but if you met me in real life, you'd actually think I don't, because what we as a consumer or, a regular Joe soap see as a freckle is actually sometimes a mole. So it's important just to keep yourself checked as well. So
good advice.
Great advice, Jen. Okay, look, Jennifer Rock, aka The Skin Nerd, thank you very much. You can find Jennifer at The Skin Nerd on Instagram and theskinnerd.com. Tom Coleman, thank you so much, at tomcoleman.ie on Instagram and the website tomcoleman.ie.
Louise Carroll, chartered psychologist and musician. You can find Louise at Louise Carroll, that's Louise with a Z, on Instagram, or Louise Composer on Twitter.
And Niamh Brady, productivity coach, author of Remote Working Essentials, niamhbrady.com and at Niamh Brady Coach on social media. Guys, thank you so much for taking the time to join us this week on the radio, and particularly now for the panel. We've got lots of messages in and people just saying they really enjoyed all of your input and answering all the questions that, even if they weren't directly applying to them, they know that they're answering some someone else's question. So thank you so much.
Yeah, really, really brilliant advice. And of course, Mind Yourself Now happens on our radio show every Monday at 10:30. Of course, our radio show is Monday to Friday, 9 to 12 on Today FM. And we'll have these wonderful experts and loads of other ones as well on all kinds of topics. And if you ever have a question you want to get to us, just email Dermot and Dave at Today FM and we'll try and set it up for Mind Yourself Now. Thank you for all your comments and your messages today on Facebook Live. And thanks to the team here at Today FM, to Paul, Ross and Emer in the back room there making it all happen, and again to our wonderful experts, and most of all to you guys for tuning in, and we'll talk to you on the radios tomorrow morning from 9 right here on Today FM.
Cheers, and thanks Peter too. We've got his name.
Sorry Pete. See you guys.